Hey everyone, welcome back. In this tutorial, we are going to add relevance and sentiment stock analysis to our Plotly AI agent. So the user is going to choose stock from the S&P 500. Immediately, the data of that stock is going to be grabbed from AlphaVantage and going to display the last 50 articles about this stock. And this is 50 articles from the last 10 days. So you can click on one of these articles, like right this or this one, and you can see they're from July 6th, which is today. This one is from July 5th, which is from yesterday. And each article will have a title, a summary with a tooltip, and relevance of that article to the stock ticker, and the sentiment. So in this article, the sentiment is pretty negative. They're talking about Tesla in a negative way, while this article right here has a pretty positive sentiment and relevance to the Tesla stock. And now we can actually continue using the Plotly AI agent that we built a couple of videos ago and just tell it to do stuff. So let's tell it to do this. Copy this so we don't have to type everything. Create a violin plot that can visualize the data under the sentiment column. Voila, we have a violin plot. Maybe we'll tell it to create something else. A graph, any graph that they want to explain the correlation between the sentiment and relevance column, and add a linear regression line to that plot. So here we see we have a linear regression. Everything here is in Plotly because our AI agent is only building graphs in Plotly. So you have the code you can run yourself, but you don't really need to since you have the graph displayed here for your beautiful eyes. So we can do this with multiple tickers. Let's choose like Apple, for example, or anyone we want, and it will give us the latest news because we connected to AlphaVantage. So how do we do this? Most of this app, at least this section right here, where we are using the AI agent to create our Plotly graph, I already spoke about in the video above. So just click above. If you haven't seen that video, it's very important because in that video, I explained the second callback, how I create the Plotly graph, how I create the code and the markdown, how I invoke the chain. In this video, we're going to focus on grabbing the data from AlphaVantage, like this one that we see right here, and displaying everything inside -AG grid. So one thing I would recommend before you continue watching this tutorial until the end, join the Charming Data community. This is a place where we work together on community projects for our own career development portfolio. This month, we have our July project, Conflict and Casualties, civilian casualties in violent conflicts around the world. We had other projects suggested by other community members, neural style transfer. Every month we start a project together with the goal of working with others, collaborating, and building our skills in Python, data visualization, and AI. Specifically for this code, you will need to join the Lanchaing education space. I will add this code right here as a new post into this space so you can access the code as well. All right, so let's go back to the code. Here, I'm importing all the necessary libraries. I talked about these two things and the model that we choose, Llama 3, in the video above, so you can take a look at that. But essentially, we're just grabbing our Groq API key to access the model and our AlphaVantage API key, which both exist in the ANV file right here, grab them and put them inside our app. I'll put this link under the video. This is where you can create your free AlphaVantage API key. Also, Groq is free for now, as far as I know. So all this is for free, which is pretty cool. Now, I'm using the S&P 500 CSV sheet, which I'll also add to the post, just to get our tickers, our stock tickers. This is a list of all our symbols, which I'm going to use here below inside the dropdown. All right, so the dropdown will have all the different symbols from the S&P 500. All right, So here's our prompt, which I go over the video as well a couple of weeks ago. You are an expert in Plotly, and you are going to create a graph based on the data provided. All right. Then we have our layout. Let's jump into our layout. Line 52, we have our dropdown, our title, our dropdown, and our empty div, which is where we are going to put our -AG grid and our text box and our button. And this all happens in the first callback. This is the most important callback of this video, of this tutorial that I'm going to focus on. In this callback, we're actually listening to the value of the dropdown. Remember, stock ticker is the dropdown ID. So we're listening to the value, which is the beginning. At the very first time, it's none. We're going to listen to the stock selected. If it's none, then don't do anything. Return no update, just leave everything the same. If it's not none, then do this, right? So what are we doing? Most importantly, line 71, we are using this function. We are activating or executing this function, query news, with the stock ticker, with the stock symbol, and the AlphaVantage key. Both of these come right here, the AlphaVantage key, and the stock ticker comes from the dropdown. And this is the query news. This is the function that comes from the news.py file. So this is the only other file that you need. The most of this code was created by Troy Scribner on this GitHub repository. I modified it only slightly, which I'll explain right now. So here's our function, right? Our symbol and the AlphaVantage key. So if we choose, let's choose Apple, what it's going to do, let's choose it, yeah, Apple is fine. It's going to do, it's going to take the symbol, Apple, it's going to say if symbol is none, do something. In this case, we skip this because symbol is Apple, and we're going to create this string, which we're going to use later to get the response, right? And this string is just a string that AlphaVantage can read, just like this one, in the URL. It's going to take the last, the ticket, the time from, is going to take this tuple, the date, which is from 10 days ago, right? This comes from line 7 and 8. So go back only 10 days. It's going to take this ticker, this symbol, which is in our case Apple, and the AlphaVantage key. And now that we have the correct string, now we can actually request it. We'll get the JSON, right? We're actually getting everything in here as the JSON, all of this. See raw data, JSON. And we're going to only turn the feed part of the JSON, this part, into our pandas data frame. Now this feed, this pandas data frame right here, the DF, is actually a list of 50 different dictionaries, 50 rows representing 50 different articles. Every row is a dictionary of an article. And so once we have all our articles, every single row has multiple column headers: title, URL, sources, topics, and ticker sentiment. So it's going to go into, we built this 3 functions, Troy built this 3 functions to go into the ticker sentiment column and only pull the one that has the relevant ticker, right? We chose Apple, so it's not going to choose 0 because that's Microsoft. This article talks about 4 different tickers. We're going to focus on this one, number 3, Apple, and then we're going to pull the relevance and the sentiment score. The relevance and the sentiment score. We're going to pull these 2 scores, and therefore we have at the end a complete pandas data frame with 50 rows of 50 articles and 5 different column headers: title, summary, URL, relevance, and sentiment, which is exactly what you see here, right? These 5 different columns. So this is our pandas data frame. So once we get this pandas data frame, go back to our app.py file, we are going to get this pandas data frame, save it into our root directory, see, new DF. We're going to save it as a CSV file. So later, this code that we talked about in the first video can execute the Plotly code and retrieve the graph. So I'm going to save this into our root folder, and then we're going to use the pandas data frame to return a grid, a text box, and a button, and an empty div. Text box, button, and empty div. And then in the second callback, we're going to use the second callback to grab the file information, the file data, from our store component, which is right here. Remember, we saved the pandas data frame, the newsdf, into our data property, which is the client's browser. Now it's in the browser, so it can't be too big. You can't have like a 20 megabyte data set. We save into the browser, we pull it again here in the callback, we create our sample rows, and then ask our Plotly AI agent to create the graph that we wanted to create and explain the code to us. And that's how we get this beautiful example of our Plotly AI agent that can build graphs on sentiment and relevance and data sets that is the most recent and up-to-date data on a particular stock. All right, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a lot. If you did, don't forget to visit Charming Data and join the July project, join the August project. If you're watching this in December, join the December project. You're going to improve your AI skills, your data visualization, and you're going to meet other people, cool people, and learn together. Always remember, we're better together, so help each other out.